This is our home on Mill Road in Novato, California. We're going on a trip. Join us on our travels as we go to the Iberian Peninsula.
Numa casa portuguesa fica bem, pão e vinho sobre a mesa. E se à porta humildemente bate alguém, senta-se à mesa com a gente. Fica bem esta franqueza, fica bem, que o povo nunca desmente. Na alegria da pobreza está nesta grande riqueza de dar e ficar contente. Quatro paredes caiadas, cheirinho alecrim, cacho de uvas doiradas, duas rosas num jardim, São José de azulejos, mais o sol da primavera.
Our home in Lisbon was named for a nearby statue of a marquesa. We met the other travelers in our group in the hotel lobby and went to the bar for a welcome drink.
I am Anna, as you know already. So I would like, first of all, to welcome you to Portugal, to Lisbon, which is my city. It's where I was born. I was born not far from here.
Our tour leader, Anna, provided us with port and wine, and then our group of 14 each gave a brief introduction. We then left the hotel for a walk through the neighborhood. Our destination, our first Portuguese dinner. The jacaranda trees were filled with purple flowers, and the weather was mild. The evening light made the colorful buildings glow as we wandered through small limestone and basalt cobbled plazas, going to Barrio Alto. We passed through a park with a venerated 150-year-old cypress, lovingly held up by beautiful ironwork. The tapas bars were beginning to fill, and people were relaxing. Lisbon is 38 degrees north, about the same as San Francisco, and hilly too. It was a perfect twilight as we came up to one of the many miradoras, or viewpoints of Lisbon. This one has a map that points out a castle and a convent that are above the Tagus River off in the distance. We continued on our stroll through old Barrio Alto, winding through the narrow lanes and looking up at hand-painted Portuguese tile street signs. We then came to our destination, where we passed a lively conversation as we entered Sophia's Tapas. There was an old picture of Sophia to greet us, with drinks taps that offered cider, beer, or wine. Seated at a long table, we were served more Portuguese wine. Olives and bread were laid out on a colorful tablecloth. Our server began to bring a multitude of dishes, including baked goat cheese, slowly melting in its warm bowl.
Codfish with cornbread.
Codfish and fish in general are abundant in Portugal, and this was the first of many fish meals we would enjoy. As we dined, a group of Fado musicians came into the dining room, our entertainment for this evening. One musician had a beautiful 12-string vintage Portuguese guitar.
This is
This is a piece of history.
this is history you're holding there. This is the diva of Portugal, Fado, is Amália Rodrigues. She's in the national pantheon, and this is the guitar that was played by the guitar player of Amália.
It was Amália Rodrigues that was singing the opening song of this production. She was known as the Queen of Fado, a distinctive Portuguese art form that follows a traditional structure.
Trigueirinha de olhos verdes, pelas pernas, largocista, da tua graça através.
Fado is often filled with mournful tunes and lyrics, frequently about the sea or the life of the poor. Fado could be translated as fate. It's infused with a sentiment of resignation and melancholia. This neighborhood, Barrio Alto, is where Fado originated. No one knows how long ago it began, but it continues to this day. Fado is on the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage List.
Mas eu não conheci, por isso quando canto, na dor da minha voz, por jeito de saudade. Quase não conheci, por isso quando canto, anda na minha voz, por jeito de saudade.
Departing Sophia's Tapas, we walked across a deserted plaza to meet our bus and go back to our hotel.
Walking through the Barrio Alto, having this dinner in the old quarter of Lisbon, and having this fabulous experience of the Fado music, such a traditional song of the soul of Lisbon. And now we are going back to the hotel. So I want to remind you of the program for tomorrow. We are going to have a wake-up call for everybody at 7:30.
At our hotel, we were grateful for a fabulous evening in Lisbon, but it had been a long day with its long flight. We were ready to use our facilities and get some sleep.
Our first morning in Lisbon, we looked out at our view, down the tree-lined boulevard to the Tagus River. Off we went to the breakfast buffet. Fruit and croissants, along with other pastries, were on offer. There was also cereal, yogurt, and juice, and hot covered pans that revealed eggs and bacon. Even after our large fish dinner the night before, we were again hungry. Finally, we went out to find Anna at the bus and go out into Lisbon.
We are going to start by doing a panoramic tour. So we are going to have the first impression of the city for you to see how the city works. And Lisbon is famous as the city of 7 hills. So there are 7 hills. One of them is very close to the hotel, so we are going to start there.
We passed the statue of the Marquesa that gave our hotel its name. At the top of the hill, we could once again see the Marquesa's statue as we pulled into a large terrace. A great view of the river and the long, green, tree-lined boulevard stretched out behind the statue, giving another panoramic view of this area of Lisbon. Back down at the bottom of the hill, we drove along that tree-lined boulevard. It has sycamore trees and is paved with small cobblestones that are a distinctive feature in Portugal. This is Liberty Avenue, called the Avenida by locals. It's a magnificent place for a cool stroll on a hot day. Then we drove to a wavy cobbled plaza.
It's a kind of represents the connection between Portugal and the sea. Very important for our country. and you can see the fountains. They came from Paris, and you see the statue in the middle represents the King Pedro IV. He is Pedro IV of Portugal and Pedro I of Brazil.
We then drove down to the waterfront of the Tagus River and came to a very familiar-looking bridge.
You can tell a lot of tales when you go back home, because if you take a picture from the bridge, you can say that you were maybe in San Francisco. The bridge is called 25th of April Bridge, which is the day of the revolution back in 1974.
Then we stopped at the Geronimos Monastery, an enormously long, white carved limestone building that includes a giant church. It's one of the most important monuments in Lisbon. Built beginning in the 1400s, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's an example of the Portuguese Gothic Manuelan style. It was built with the taxes collected on pepper, cinnamon, and cloves imported after the discoveries of Portuguese explorers. One of the most famous of these explorers was Vasco da Gama, a world-renowned sailor who played a very important role in the history during the period of discoveries. Da Gama was the first European to achieve the sea route from Lisbon to India in 1498. After this, the Portuguese were able to have a monopoly on the spice trade in Europe for centuries to come. Anna told us about the Manuelan architecture named for the Portuguese King Manuel I, whose reign coincided with its development. The style was very influenced by the astonishing successes of the voyages during the Age of Discovery of the Portuguese navigators. We wandered the church, viewing the lavish Manuelan style, when we came to the stained glass window that was dedicated to Vasco da Gama. He kneels, no doubt giving thanks for his amazing success. Spices and other goods brought back from India were sold at an enormous profit for his king. Da Gama lies here in his marble tomb. He is honored and celebrated in the world for being the first to open a direct sea route from Europe to Asia. Leaving the enormous monastery, we passed a modern streetcar that goes in front of the long building. There's a famous bakery in this neighborhood. Anna had purchased its renowned cream tarts. These yummy pastries were originated by the local monks to raise money for the monastery. And we're glad they did, as we all shared in the tasty tarts. There's a gift shop inside the bakery selling souvenirs of the Portuguese era of discovery. Tiles, ship models, and books are available to expand one's knowledge of the period. Sparkling navigation instruments can be bought, or models and toys for the kids. There's even a 3D puzzle of our next destination.
So we see here on the right, the Tower of the Lion. We are only going to see it from the outside. Inside it was used as a prison in the 19th century. And so it doesn't have so much furniture or things to see inside. It's basically more interesting from the outside.
A path leads to the tower, another UNESCO World Heritage Site. Finished in 1519 in the Manuelan style, it began as a fort to guard the entrance to the Tagus River. We posed between a small model and the tower, thrilled to be together in Portugal. Next to the tower is a monument to a different kind of Portuguese explorer. This one commemorates the first aerial crossing in 1922 of the South Atlantic from Lisbon to Rio de Janeiro by Portuguese naval aviators. There's a long path next to the Tagus River, and several vendors had set up food booths along the way. You can pedal a bike and make your own smoothie. Maybe you'd like some frozen yogurt. This cute trailer is next to several stalls selling souvenirs. There are colorful bags and a variety of the iconic Portuguese roosters. The most unique items were made of cork, a specialty in Portugal. Just the thing to take back home from the trip. It was now time to meet the bus and drive down the riverfront. Next came the Monument to the Discoveries. This is where ships first departed on expeditions to find a route for trading with India. The monument celebrates the heroism of the explorers and their supporters seeking fortune during the 14 and 1500s. The illustrious group is headed by Henry the Navigator, who planned many of the expeditions. It includes Vasco da Gama, Ferdinand Magellan, and one woman, Queen Philippa of Portugal. Anna told us stories about these people, and then our group posed next to the awesome monument. Below the monument, there is a huge limestone map that illustrates the dates and places of Portuguese exploration.
The first trip of navigation took place from Portugal to the north of Africa, right here, 1450. And then they continued around the coast of Africa, and in the beginning they used the small boats. You see the small caravels? They have a triangular shaped sail. This is a new thing that allows them to navigate against the wind or with a favorable wind. So with a good wind or bad wind, they can always sail. That's the big novelty of the triangular shaped sail. The caravel is an invention of the Portuguese, and it is a small boat. It's like an investigation boat. And when they sailed for the first time, Cape Puxador, they tried 13 times until they made it. Finally, on the 13th attempt, they went over the Cape Puxador. So when they went over the Cape Puxador, they continued, and they went around this turn in Africa, and they thought, okay, around the corner we are in India, because their goal was to reach India by sea.
Of course, da Gama was the first to get past the Cape of Good Hope with its treacherous and unknown hazards, and finally arrive in Calcutta, India in 1498, an achievement of world-changing proportions. One final look down the length of this astounding monument, set against the ever-changing skies of Lisbon. Off again, we pass the cruise port on the Tagus River.
Then something a little different. The narrowest walkway in Lisbon. We were walking up to the Fama neighborhood. Festivities are held in June for the patron saint of Lisbon, Saint Anthony. This was June 1st, and so things were just beginning. Fama was decorating for a celebration.
Dizem que é mau que faz e acontece, arma confusão e o diabo acete. Agarrem-me que eu vou amanhã, nem sei o que lhe faço. Desgranho os cabelos, esborrato os lábios. Se não me seguram, dou-lhe forte e feio. Beijinhos na boca, arrepios no peito. E pagas as favas, eu digo enfim. Oh, meu rapazinho, és fraco para mim.
The gentrification she is talking about. This is a very hot issue now because, of course, this neighborhood is very traditional and there is a lot of interest in terms of tourism to buy these homes here, and they're kicking out the people who always lived here because the prices are getting very high.
They rent here or buy?
Most of them are rented. But there was in the past you could pass the rent from one like inherit. The rent fees, so you would keep a low fare, and now it's not the same anymore.
After our learning and discovery about the problem of gentrification in Fama, we walked on. You can just stop in an open door and buy tapas to help a local resident earn a bit of money and pay her rent. There are regular shops that tempt in this lively and colorful neighborhood, with splashes of ancient Portuguese tiles on the walls. We came to a big plaza, busy with sidewalk cafes. People were out enjoying themselves, and so were we. We then entered a tapas place for our lunch.
The salad is to share, and then the chorizo, which is a traditional kind of sausage that is already smoked, it's ready to eat, but here we prepare it, we grill it with a bit of alcohol. And you burn it. Aguardiente, not alcohol, firewater, she says, firewater.
In small ceramic grills, sausages were heated, creating our flambe tapas. We also had olives and bread and, of course, a bottle of wine to go along with more wine. Also a salad and a fish dish of grouper.
We didn't have any Coca-Cola.
it was, once upon a time, in the 20s, the fanciest casino in Lisbon. It was a place for nightlife that they would gamble, not like a casino today. There were no machines, they were like poker playing or things like that. It was like a social meeting where they would discuss politics, literature, and all these kind of things. So connected to the high end or high society meetings.
After touring the opulent social club, we carried on to take a funicular up another hill. It's a national monument and venerated, just like the cable cars in San Francisco. There are seats for 22 people, with 20 allowed to stand. This ride of about 2 minutes has been speeded up. Called Lavra Funicular, it's one of 3 funiculars in Lisbon. This one opened in 1884. It was first powered by a water counterweight system, where the weight of the ascending car going up is powered by the weight of the descending car going down. Later, the funicular was converted to steam power. In 1915, it was electrified. The Church of St. Dominic is absolutely unique. A Portuguese national monument, it stands here after a horrific fire in 1959 that killed 2 firefighters. The building was completely gutted and many treasures were destroyed. After it was decided to leave obvious signs of the devastating fire, the church was rebuilt and then reopened in 1994. Nearby the church is a doorway to a tiny bar that sells only one strong and miniature drink. It's a Portuguese liqueur made by infusing sour cherries, spices, and sugar with alcohol. Anna treated us to this distinctive flavor, and we all celebrated being together on this amazing and gorgeous day in Lisbon. We walked across the wave-patterned plaza that we had driven past earlier in the day. Then we headed up Liberty Avenue to return to our hotel. On the way, we found statues commemorating the men who create the tiny limestone and basalt cobbles, those distinctive pavers of Portugal. Back in our room, we checked out our euros. Dinner was on our own this evening, and we wanted to be prepared to pay by credit or cash. Did you know that the colorful European banknote currency gets smaller in size depending on the value? The coins are colorful and different sizes too. Directly across from our hotel was a small restaurant. Of course, we must have some local wine. We love that white is branco in Portuguese and ordered up some branco. We also love that you can't get a small pour in the EU due to its laws and the measuring lines. Bread came on top of salmon salad with walnuts, garbanzo beans, apples, and pasta. We took a selfie across in the mirrored wall, then thanked our server, Philippa, and paid the very reasonable cost, about $40.
In the morning, we checked out the weather out our hotel window and its wonderful view to the river. After breakfast, we headed out through the lobby and boarded our tour bus. There was plenty of room to spread out as we passed through Lisbon, departing for the countryside, going west.
We are going to Sintra. We are going to start by visiting one of the highlights of the area of Sintra, which is the Palace of Pena. We are probably not going to be the only ones there. That's why, yeah, I know.
Oh no.
I know it's really bad, but I tried to send them all away, but it is difficult.
The bus left the highway and turned down a road headed for the town of Sintra, another UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a resort in the foothills of the mountains. A long-time royal sanctuary and an escape from the city, its forested environment is studded with pastel-colored villas and palaces. The town contains the medieval Moorish and Manuelan-style Sintra National Palace, distinguished by dramatic twin chimneys. Sintra also contains the hilltop 19th century Pena Palace, known for its very whimsical design and vivid color. It began to drizzle as we drove in our big bus higher into the mountains, traversing ever-narrowing roads on the approach to the town. After about 40 minutes, we were in heavy fog as we came into the palatial gardens of the amazing Pena Palace. This is an internet overhead photo of the Palace of Pena in Sintra on an obviously sunnier day. We got in line at the gatehouse to board another bus, and this one dropped us off at the foggy, fairy tale palace. We walked through the gate and got a closer look at the amazing decoration found all over the fun and colorful palace. One could see why it's a World Heritage Site. There's certainly nothing else like it in the world. There used to be a crumbling monastery on the spot when Portuguese King Ferdinand decided in 1838 to transform the remains of the monastery into a palace that could serve as a summer residence for the Portuguese royal family. Ferdinand at first was a consort king, so he had few governing duties. Much like the husband of his first cousin, Queen Victoria, her consort also found creative ways to spend his time. Inside the palace, we went upstairs to view the lavishly decorated rooms and corridors. Leaving the royals' rooms, you enter the kitchen. It's a wonderful collection of copper and a huge stove. It was our favorite room in the palace. There must have been some sumptuous meals prepared in this large area. After the kitchen, you arrive, where else? The gift shop. Coming out on one of the balconies, we looked down on the courtyard and marveled at the imagination that thought up these embellishments and vivid colors for the palace. The huge monster that grows out of one wall under a window is particularly arresting. Back through the gates, we were met by a nature guide named Philippa.
Create gardens that look like forests. They look natural. They intend to look like that, and because they look like that, they're more mysterious, they're more surprising. You never know what you're going to find. So they bring exotic species from all over the world, so that you never know what you're going to find. Now you're in North America, in 5 minutes you're in Asia, and then you're back to Europe. You're always traveling. It's much cheaper. It doesn't take long, so about an hour or so. And you get to see species you've never seen before. Some of them you're going to recognize, I'm sure.
We followed behind Philippa, discovering the garden together.
The driver is going to drop us off at a designated point, that is the drop-off and pick-up point, and then we are going to have to walk a little bit to our restaurant, which is Patio do Garret. It is the courtyard or the patio of Garret. There was a famous writer. We are going straight for lunch, and then after lunch you are going to have some time in the center to explore the center of town. It's very pretty. It's a picturesque center with the narrow streets and everything.
Down the hill we came to the town. We'd worked up an appetite on our morning at the Pena Palace and Garden. We climbed a cobbled stairway and passed a charming old fountain to arrive at our busy restaurant. We were getting used to drinking wine and being served great meals. This time we had vegetable soup as the first course, fish with potatoes and cabbage for our main, along with some great bronco, brought to us by our server, George. It's hard to say no. It's like, no, Penny. It comes from a different table, but they don't want to throw it away. Dessert this time was coffee cream cake, which many of us shared with someone who had a sweet tooth.
No, he does not drink coffee. He's a better salesman than the other. The only coffee he ever drinks is he drinks espresso.
Back down we went into the shopping area of Sintra. Plenty of Portuguese ceramics were available in the tiny shops fronting the tiny lanes. Their intricate patterns and vivid colors could brighten any room. There was that Portuguese rooster, this time in a single vivid color. We wandered past the shops, perusing the variety of merchandise. We caught up with some of the others, and I got into a discussion about the finer points of automatic teller machines. Across from the ATM was a bakery that had a large variety of luscious products, including those custard tarts originated by the monks in Lisbon. We left the tiny lanes, aiming for the National Palace of Sintra, which was further down the hill. The main plaza of Sintra has shops and beautiful mansions peeking out from the hillside. The Palace of Sintra, with its distinctive white kitchen chimneys, was just above the plaza. Walking across its courtyard, we went up on its terrace for the view. The distinctive town hall tower stood above the orange tile roofs of the many charming cottages and mansions. Crossing the courtyard, we took a final look up at the white chimneys and went to join our group. It was time to leave Sintra.
Chimneys of the kitchen of the palace. With a crane. I don't know why, but in all the landmarks there is a crane in the way. But it is being restored. Town hall today. You see the flag of Sintra, the flag of Portugal, and the European Union.
Returning to Lisbon, we drove under a monumental aqueduct. Completed in 1744, it's 5 miles long and brings water to the city from the north of Portugal. A remarkable example of engineering.
Later that day, some of us joined Anna for another adventurous and memorable evening. We walked down Liberty Avenue and came to a park decorated for St. Anthony celebrations. We were going for a sardine experience. The menu board showed sardines and snails. This would be a truly local dining event. St. Anthony was born in Lisbon, the child of nobles. He went on to become a Franciscan friar, and legend says he once went to a river and began preaching to the fish. The fish gathered around to hear him, raising their heads above the water. It's a fitting story for the city's patron saint, who today presides over celebrations that take place in a smoky haze produced by thousands of grilled sardines. Anna and her friend Raquel, another tour leader, showed us the proper way to eat Portuguese sardines as we drank sangria. Our gang was commemorating St. Anthony like we were residents. After sardines, we went to the churros booth. Fresh dough was sizzling in the hot cauldron. We were just in time for a fresh batch. Back up Liberty Avenue, we stopped at the Tivoli Hotel to see the sunset from its rooftop bar.
We can all get in here.
It's not the number.
We didn't gain any weight out with all those
take
churros.
one more with us.
Do you know the game, Sardines?
This, yeah, we call it like this.
We have-
I don't have the other hand.
we have
free.
this one. Oh, we do.
This is sardines for
Sardines. Oh, with two hands. All right, out.
Out. We're good.
Okay, go out. To the left.
Tamara was our server at the Tivoli Sky Bar. She brought us Bronco. She was a fashionista with her fun and fashionable shoes. We noticed other fashionistas on the roof. They were there celebrating a bachelorette party.
This morning, we took a last look at our Lisbon hotel view. We were leaving the city and going inland to regions of fields and farms in rural Portugal. First, we passed through the old and then the new area of town.
That's the bullfight ring of Lisbon. It's called Campo Pequeno, and it is a brick building inspired in the Moorish style, the Moorish architecture. It was built in the 19th century, and it is a nice building. On the 7th of June is the next bullfight.
Then we came to the newest part of Lisbon that holds a building designed by the Spaniard Santiago Calatrava.
And on the left, you can see the famous railway station. Okay?
You're missing it.
This is the terminal and interface with the subway underneath, train on top, and the bus terminal behind. All made in steel and glass. So do you like it?
Yeah.
Yes? It's very different, right? So when you compare to Fama.
We departed Lisbon and drove over the second longest bridge in Europe. The bridge crosses the Tagus River and is 7.6 miles long. It opened to traffic in 1998. This was just in time for a World's Fair that celebrated the 500th anniversary of the discovery by Vasco da Gama of a sea route from Portugal to India. The bridge is named for da Gama's honor. It was a $1.1 billion project, and its builders will receive the first 40 years of tolls from this bridge and also from that one that looks just like the Golden Gate Bridge. On we went into the countryside, passing through vineyards, small villages, and towns.
Azeitao, that's the name of the town we are arriving, and it is very famous for different things. Besides the cheese and the tiles we are going to get acquainted with, you also have here the wine. The wine is a very important product here, and we are going to get acquainted with the wine as well, with the wine tasting. No, not now. It's going to be later. Well, it must be noon somewhere.
In the town of Azeitao, we stopped at a factory that makes wonderful and colorful Portuguese ceramic tiles.
Explain us the tiles. He can speak a little bit English, but he prefers for me to translate. But if you have questions, please feel free to interrupt at any time. And he says, estava a dizer que...
Usamos três técnicas antigas.
So here in this manufacturer, they use 3 ancient techniques of tile making.
Portanto, esta é a chamada técnica de corda seca, que é uma técnica árabe do século XV.
This is the technique that is called corda seca, the dry rope, that is from the 15th century, the Moorish technique.
Depois temos a técnica de aresta.
Then we have the Moorish technique that we call aresta. Aresta can be translated as edge.
So you can feel it. It's not flat.
It's not flat.
Depois a técnica que nós mais produzimos, que é a chamada técnica da majolica, século XV também.
And this is the technique they use the most, that is the majolica technique from the 15th century as well.
Louise showed us the way each tile is rolled out from a piece of clay using a form to keep the depth of the tile consistent. Then we had a demonstration.
You can only go so deep.
Whoa. Okay, that's good.
You like to see me doing cookie dough.
Once again, we were having a great time. This morning, learning the techniques of tile making. After the demonstration, it was for us to try our skill at tile decorating.
A very special hostess, that is Filipa. She speaks much better English than I do, and she's going to explain us all about the cheese making in this area and how she ended up here, because she's not Portuguese, but she has a very interesting personal history, and she's really a character. And she owns the place. She is going to show us how to make cheese. We are going to work again. So I sorry, you just worked and now you work again.
So welcome. The reason I do speak English is because I'm a Rhodesian. I'm an immigrant like all of us. We're all colonials, right?
Another Filipa. This one put us to work and taught us how to make the simplest kind of cheese.
Well, I want you to squeeze as hard as you can. You have to get rid of all the air inside it, because if we were making the 25-day cheese, we don't want any air to bring bacteria and interfere with the bacteria of the cheese itself. So that's good and squished. Now push it very firmly down to the bottom of your mold.
Next stop, which is going to be the cork factory. So we are going to enter the cork world. We're going to see a lot of the cork trees and see how this natural product is transformed into so many different things, okay?
We continued heading east until we came to a cork factory with an enormous cork tree in front. A son of the owners, David, gave us his presentation while we stood under the cork tree.
So when we plant the cork tree, we used to say that we plant it for our grandchildren, because the tree needs at least 25 years to be ready for the first extraction, and after that we will extract the cork every 9 years.
9?
At least 9. The first 2 corks that we extract, they have a low quality, so we can't use them directly to make a wine stopper, to make a wallet, something with a good quality cork. For that we will have to wait for the 3rd extraction, and that means that we need at least 43 years to close a bottle of wine. This cork on the top of the tree, it's called virgin cork because it's the first cork that grows on the tree. After we extract it, it never grows back again with this texture. It grows like that one on the bottom, more uniform, darker, and that's how we want it to make something. To make the extraction of the cork, we only have 3 months in the whole year. It's between May and July. That's one of the reasons why the factory may look a little bit empty now, because on the inside we just finished the last cork from the last year, and we are starting carrying the new cork to the factory. This is our first cork from this year. When we extract the cork, as you can see, we bring the cork to the factory and it will be piled like we are starting to do there here on the outside, and it needs to stay on the outside at least for 2 months because it needs to dry, to lose the water from the tree. When it loses that water, it will contract, so if we make something like a wine stopper, it will contract and it won't be a stopper, it will be something else. If it rains when the cork is drying, that's not a problem, because cork is waterproof. It won't absorb any water after it loses the water from the tree. Okay. The young tree that we have here only have 85 years old. In average, a cork tree lives 220 years. And in some special cases, it's not very common, but we can find some cork trees living 600 years.
We looked at the newly extracted cork outside and then went into the factory where there was some dried, flattened cork stacked in piles. The tools used to extract, or what I would call peel the cork, were displayed inside for us to view. A form used to punch wine stoppers was also displayed, next to all kinds of products made of cork. These bowls were only one of many kinds of merchandise the cork growers have ingeniously created from their versatile product. Linda tried to talk me into a great cork hat, but I wasn't willing to carry it around on our trip. The women of our group, however, had no problem buying small necklaces with cork chains. Back outside, Anna demonstrated her ability to lift a very large piece of cork. Departing, we drove past neatly stacked piles, drying in the sun. Now we could recognize the cork trees as we passed them going farther on the highway. Our final spot in Portugal was Évora. We were excited as we drove up to the UNESCO World Heritage Site in a very ancient hilltop town. Our bus dropped us off at the bottom of a hill. As we climbed, the remains of a wonderful Roman temple appeared. The temple was directly across from our beautiful Pousada, a former convent from the 1400s. The rooms were located in the convent's former dormitory cells.
Have a different use now. For example, this section here used to be the old kitchen. Nowadays it is the bar. So you have the bar over here, and you have also around the corner a computer in case you need a business center. You have here on the right.
After Anna's explanation about the Pousada's facilities, we went up to our cell. It was one of 36 rooms that were presumably once very humble. They are now comfortably furnished and have ensuite facilities. No doubt the nuns who previously resided here would be surprised at the change. This time, the view from our room was a glorious pool area. After settling in a bit, we decided to explore this historic and remarkable Pousada. We had dinner in the dining room, in the convent's cloisters. Breakfast was also served there. So, we're skipping ahead to our morning meal.
We left our convent cell after a very restful night. Coming into breakfast, we found that some cell window views were above the cloister's dining area. The food was as wonderful as the accommodations. There were even some of those cream tarts, formerly made by Lisbon's monks, along with a delicious variety of tasty fruit and other offerings. After breakfast, next to the ancient Roman temple, we got our briefing.
So we are going to start now by walking to the University of Évora, which was founded in the 1500s. So it's a very, very old university from 1556. But before I go into the history, I want to tell you, so we are going to have now to walk to the university. We are going to meet students that are going to talk to us about their life here in the University of Évora, and then we get to ask them questions and all that, and take pictures with them.
We walked into the University of Évora and met Antonio, who was there to tell us about his school. We followed him to a classroom where he explained about his uniform.
The uniforms, the badges, as you can see, they stay in the left side of the cape in the inside part. So if you visit like you just see the uniforms using them at the shoulder. The other way to use this, you make one term in honor of the university, and the other number of terms are one per each year you stood up here in the university. So this is my case. 1, 2, 3, 8. And we put it like this.
Inside the cape of the uniform, the students sew patches. It brings a bit of modernity into the very old tradition of wearing black robes in academia. Antonio told us about his life at the university, and then we left the classroom and he showed us around his ancient school founded in 1556. We thanked Antonio for his information and the tour. Then, as we were leaving, he immediately began texting on his phone, a very normal student. We left the University of Évora to explore further into the World Heritage Town. The Celts first settled this hilltop more than 5,000 years ago. The Romans conquered Évora in 57 BCE. The Temple of Diana is testament to their occupation. The Romans departed about the year 400 and left behind the Christian religion and some other bits and pieces. From 715 to 1165, the Moors conquered and ruled this area, leaving evidence of their time in Portugal. After the Reconquest, Évora became Catholic, and finally Gothic Manuelan designs appeared around 1500. Our next destination, Évora's Gothic Church of St. Francis, opened in 1550. It holds an amazing chapel. On first entering, you wouldn't suspect its very unusual contents. This place contains the Capella dos Ossos, the Chapel of the Bones.
This chapel was made in the 1600s. This means after the Reformation. This is the product also of the counter-Reformation period. So the monks, they want to show that we don't need to have gold or marble or any expensive materials to have a worshipping room, to have a room to pray. So they took out all the bones of the cemetery and used those bones to decorate the inside of the church. We estimate, it's difficult to say, but we estimate, because of the number of skulls, that about 6,000 people.
That's definitely a unique chapel. How's your appetite? It was lunchtime in Évora, and we went for a local specialty, a bifana, a chicken sandwich, beginning at only €2 each.
Yeah, it's a meal. It can be a meal. It's very simple.
And the sangria.
Lunch was on our own cost this day, so Anna recommended this very affordable cafe. We paid with our euros and left as the afternoon held even more amazing activities. We were driven out through the cork tree and wildflower-filled countryside to visit our most ancient destination in Portugal. Deep inside a farmer's private property are the Megaliths of Évora. The surrounding fields are jam-packed with prehistoric sites. The megaliths here were erected about 6,000 BCE. We walked into this stone circle of 92 surviving stones.
8,000 years old. Stonehenge is 6,000 years old. This is 8,000 years old. And it was here for many, many years without anyone knowing. But local people, they had an idea that this was something important. Not just because of the amount of stones, they don't exist here, so they were brought here. The people, they knew it was important. They called it the almendres. Almendres means almonds, because these look like giant almonds. They have the shape of almonds.
Were they contoured, or are they naturally like that?
They are naturally like this, but some parts were cut and edges. And when you go and explore, you will see some of the faces of the stones were cut, and they made small holes. They dig small holes on the stone. In that one is one of the ones you can see better, the circles. They believe the circles are connected to, they worship the sun, they worship the stars, they worship the moon. And very often you see the circles, and then like a serpentine kind of symbol that replicates the rays of the sun.
Wow, what an experience! We pulled up in front of the Roman Temple of Diana, said goodbye to our driver Rita, and then took a bit of a walk around the temple. It's believed to have been built in about the year 10. That makes it old, but a youngster compared to the amazingly old megaliths. The temple was partially destroyed in the 400s by Germanic people who replaced the Romans after they abandoned Évora. The tower of the cathedral dominates the skyline from the highest spot in town. The temple, the church, and our convent were next to a small park that overlooks the valley. Bells rang out 5 o'clock, so we needed to get back to pick up some things at the convent and then meet for our evening excursion.
Today we will have to ask you to work a little bit for your dinner because we are preparing our own dinner. So this is a cooking lesson for real. So we are going to eat whatever we cook.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming. I hope you are a little hungry, aren't you?
Yes.
Good. That's a good idea. It's a motivation to cook.
You know what, they were asking me if there would be something to drink during the meal.
Depends on if
we do a good job.
their behavior.
Sophia, our cooking school owner, took us upstairs to her home. It's always so interesting to see people's private homes and how they live. The marble wall fountain was an unusual item in the hall between two leather chairs. We moved through the cozy room, passing a well-stocked library and the dining area with a chest-top television. A modern gas stove with its hood sat inside a fitted kitchen, and the dishes were stacked neatly on the drain board. I took the opportunity to use the tile-lined facilities before going down to join the others in the cooking school.
First Portuguese word of the day, saúde. Saúde. Let me tell you, you have in front of you the papers of each recipe. If you agree, you can fold them and put into your apron's pocket.
We were split into two groups, and fortified with pitchers of sangria, we set to work preparing our Portuguese dinner.
Those who say yes can take the aprons with you. Those who say no or nothing, do the dishes. So, sorry if I cannot pronounce correctly your names, but I'm trying. Evelyn Pearl.
There you go.
Very good.
Well done. A certificate.
William Donate.
Bill.
Hey, Bill.
You are this side. You are not neutral.
Linda.
See.
Hey, very good.
Okay, now we are nice people.
Van White.
Here!
Our group pulled up in front of our convent. We were leaving for Spain in the morning. Anna asked if anyone wanted to walk to the main square where she needed to do some banking at the ATM. Only Anna and I went together in the shadowy evening light.
All different wineries. This is like a wine tasting of all the Alentejo.